Sultan Nazrin Muizuddin Shah, Dato Sri Teraja Dr. Zambri, Dr. Mazalan Kamis, esteemed guests, and ladies and gentlemen. I am so honored to be here, but you may be wondering why a person from space has come here. And it really comes down to what we've already heard about, that our job, our task, because we know the mission, is to scan globally and act locally. And I've learned a lot already this morning, listening to Tuan Ku. I'm learning different things that are similar in my environment and in the sustainability environment. So we're all learning. And actually, even though we're all meeting each other right now, today, we were already meant to be together. I have seen you. I lived on the space station for 6 months, and I orbited the Earth 16 times every day. And I got to look down at the Earth and see knowing that everyone I knew was there. Now, I'm on a space station, and it's very clear to me that myself and my 5 other crewmates, we are 6 total, we are the crew of that space station. And when I look at our planet, both fragile and strong, knowing that everyone who exists is down here on the planet, it's very clear to me that you are the crew of Spaceship Earth. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to share some stories from my adventures in space. I'm going to share a little bit about our mission. I'm retired as an astronaut just last year, and yet the mission continues because it's a very pressing mission. I am driven in a certain kind of exploration. My world that I choose to explore is space. I say that what you're choosing to explore is sustainability and world development. And we have many, many similarities. So let me just share some of the stories. I've talked about the space station. We'll talk much more about that. I also flew 2 times on the space shuttle Columbia. And the woman in the middle was the commander of my second mission, Dr. Eileen Collins, Colonel Eileen Collins, first woman to command the space station, and I was part of her crew. And our job was to deploy the Chandra X-ray Observatory. This is a telescope. It's part of the family of telescopes at NASA that looks at all the different colors of the universe, all the different energies of the universe. And this particular telescope, costing almost $2 billion, was my job to launch, to make sure I delivered it safely to orbit. It's the telescope that tells us everything about when stars are exploding, supernovas, when galaxies are colliding, and when black holes are sucking everything in. They're also spewing everything out. Those are X-rays. And it's important to understand the world that we live in, the universe that we live in. So I was very proud to be part of that crew. It was an important job, and I think as we go on, you'll understand how I trained to do that job. So that was one shuttle mission. My first mission was 16 days of science experiments, getting ready, paving the way for the International Space Station. My original job was as a scientist, a chemist, a plastics chemist. And the combination of those jobs makes me quite interested in sustainability for exploration and sustainability for Earth. So, my home, a place I was very privileged to live for almost 6 months. We live in the part that is sort of up and down, and that's where it's about, people feel bad for us because it's maybe small. It's actually quite big. It is like 10 train cars without the seats in them, all together, but some are up and some are down, and it's really a lot of space. If we put that space station on a football field, American or European, it would cover the football field. It's huge. And the reason it's giant is because we have a lot of work to do up there. And the work that we're doing right now is getting ready for exploration, for going to Mars. We're doing a lot of science experiments, and many of them have the goal of understanding how do we recycle our air, our water, how do we grow plants in a place where they're very hard to grow. Now, this looks like animation, and I'm very proud to know that it's actually real film. It's not a video game. People are living there, and we are getting ready to go. I launched and landed in the Russian Soyuz from Baikonur in Kazakhstan, and we spent years getting ready as a crew. We go in groups of 3 in the Soyuz, and this is our launch night. I'm waving to my family. My son was 10 years old. My husband is a glass artist. We're doing all of the tests. It gives me chills just to see the film again. We're launching out. Now, we agreed that we would take slow steps and small ones. And I think you can see from the video that we were nervous and they forgot. So I was running to the launch pad. We are inside the very small part at the top. And I launched on the 15th of December, the day after my 50th birthday. It was a very nice birthday present. It only takes 8.5 minutes to reach orbit. We're in that small craft. It's the size of a smart car, a very small car. And here we are just before Christmas, up on the space station. This is my favorite part of the whole movie, because it shows what it's like to live in space. Now that it's so big and we have so much work to do, it's not about floating around. It is about flying from place to place, leading the life of Peter Pan. And it is magical, especially if you're someone like me, who is maybe not so graceful here on the ground. My job was to capture supply ships. I know I have very good hair up in space. Now, these origami are very special. We were up there during the Japanese tsunami, and we had just captured and brought aboard the Japanese supply module, the supply ship. Only the second time that a person, myself actually, had captured a supply ship using the robotic arm and attached it to the space station. And that was the work of our friends, our colleagues. Our hearts were in Japan, looking at the evidence of the tsunami, but our scientific sides had to be working, in that we can provide very valuable information from the space station because we are seeing a picture of what is happening on the ground. We could capture images of Japan as we were going over to understand how much power was left, to understand the state of flooding. I was very happy and privileged to be part of that important work. And I think it shows you the importance of having a view that's different, that can show you that big picture and that small picture. Now, this is the arrival of the space shuttle to the space station. It happened 2 times. 2 shuttles came up while I was there. You see the robotic arm on the bottom, and we are docking. The shuttle is docking with the space station, and on board they have a new module, a new piece of the space station that they will attach. And we're welcoming, the astronaut family is very much a family, including your Sheikh Muzaffar. He was not on this mission, but I will show some images of him. And it's such a privilege to go to space that for all of us, we become instantly a family. Even without our choosing, we are together forever. This is a robot that we're learning up in space, and the robot is the one on the left, just so you know. That's my colleague, Scott Kelly. He was up there for a year. But that robot is helping us to learn, how do humans and robots work together? What do we need to know about them, and what do we need to make sure that they're designed to do to really help us? My most terrifying moment, cutting hair in space. And gathering to watch the next crew come up. You notice our kitchen table there, it's not horizontal, because it doesn't need to be. And it's because we're learning to look at things in a whole new way. This is a science experiment you'll see a little bit more about here. Let's see. Just a little bit about spacewalking. I'll say for myself, as a smaller person, this is the biggest challenge for me in the work that we do. And I was quite honored. And actually, it was the result of really a lot of hard work and the hard work of a team to make sure that I was ready to be on the spacewalking team of the space station. And so that's my spacesuit up there. The other work that I did a lot of the robotics, and it was new. And this is where we have the new companies like SpaceX, like Orbital Sciences, like Blue Origin. They're sending supply ships up to the space station, and this is NASA's space station, along with our international partners of Russia and Japan and Canada and 16 countries in Europe. And so can you imagine one new company, SpaceX, for example, is suddenly going to play with this group that has been working together for years to run an international space station. And part of my job when I came home was to help everybody see this picture in different ways, to understand for the crew, what are people doing on the ground? For the ground, what does it mean to be up in space and to see this supply ship coming? The advice I gave to all of my colleagues, because I was the second person to ever capture this with the robotic arm, the advice that I said to them was, we do so many simulations, but we are always thinking, actually, as Tuan Ku mentioned, we're needing to think about what do these indexes mean? We're using things to measure. What do they measure, but what do they not measure? And when we are practicing in the simulator, it's not the real Earth underneath. It's a picture. And it's really easy to see as the robotic arm is getting closer and closer and closer. But when we did this on the real day, myself and Paolo Nespoli, who's actually on the space station right now, when Paolo and I did this with the Earth, the real Earth, the beautiful Earth, and going in between the arm and the supply ship, it was very difficult to know how close we were getting and how fast we were going. So it was very challenging, and at NASA, we're always thinking, what does this simulate and what does it not? And we can be so busy thinking about and trying to perfect the simulation when we need to always be looking at what is the big picture. So a little bit about the science that we do up there, mostly so that you understand, it's not to make all of you scientists, but it's to help you understand, first of all, that it's important work that cannot be done on Earth. And second, it is helping us understand things that are really important for Earth. So the reason it's both exciting and wonderful and an opportunity up there is in this picture. Everything is floating around. For someone like me who can lose the remote control 2 times every night at home, this is a challenging environment. The floating, the flying, it's magical, it's fun, but it actually gives us an opportunity. For example, we're getting to see, what do liquids really want to do? Down here on the ground, they don't have a choice. They're going to be on the bottom of whatever container they're in. But up in space, it's my colleague André Kuipers from the Netherlands, up in space, we're getting to see exactly what they want to do, because up there, it's not without the big force of gravity, it's the tiny, tiny little forces that become important. The little forces that make the shape on your car that's clean, that make the round shape on your car that is dirty, that make the flat shape, that's surface tension. It's really important here on Earth for every process that involves flow through a pipe or flow. That means rivers, that means factories, that means our pipes, that means medical devices where the really tiny forces are actually important. And in space, we're learning about those tiny forces. We're learning that this is sometimes what liquids really want to do. And space is the place to do that. In the field of combustion, we are lucky that up there, the lighter gases that are given off, they don't rise. And so for us, on the left is Earth, an Earth candle flame. On the right is a space candle flame. And you can see that on the Earth, the lighter gases are rising like hot air balloons, but in space that won't happen. Weightless. So in space, everything is round like that, and it happens more slowly, and it means that we get to measure things about combustion not in less than a second, but over 30 or 40 seconds for the same measurement that has to be so fast on Earth. So it's a different way, it's a different lens, a different way to look at a problem and try to be open-minded about what are the solutions that you see. We also work in crystals. Up in space, we can make crystals that are more perfect because they're growing in this very quiet, gentle environment. This is the, and then we can also do a lot of work on our own health. Up in space, something happens to us, which is that when we are, since we are flying everywhere, then we are not sending a message to our brain. Every time I step, I'm sending a message to my brain. She needs these bones, these muscles. She needs them to be strong. The message doesn't come, and I lose bone. In space, we lose bone 10 times faster than a woman who is 70 years old and has osteoporosis. So what she loses in a year, I can lose in 1 month in space. So in 6 months, I can come back missing 10% of my bone mass. It's dangerous, and at the same time, it's an opportunity. Because it's happening fast, it's easier to measure. So we can understand what's going on in this process. Important for space, important for Earth. And I'm happy to say that because of what we're learning, there's good news and there's bad news. So the good news is we have some very good ideas about what's important for maintaining bone mass. The bad news is that exercise is at the top of the list. So we exercise about an hour and a half every day on the space station. And when I cannot speak for other people, but when I came back, I had all of the bone that I went with. Not exactly probably in the same place. The current theory is that we actually, if your bone is a pipe, we lose some bone out of the middle, but by exercising, we are growing bone onto the outside. So I probably have bones that are a little thinner inside, not so connected, but stronger outside. What does that mean for me when I'm getting older? We'll find out. We're scientists. I get a physical and do measurements every single year. So a number of different experiments that we do up there. Let me see if I can get this guy to go. And so we're growing plants in space. And the reason is that on the way to Mars, I personally would like to have food. I love food. And so we need to understand, how do we grow plants in a place where it's difficult? We did a lot of experiments on my first mission, and now in doing small plants, and now we're actually able to grow lettuce on the space station. So we're learning, how do we grow things in a place where it's hard to do that? How can we do that with a minimum of energy? How can we think about soil, about fertilizer in a sustainable way? You know, for exploration, we can't bring very much with us. And so we can't afford to have our fertilizer going into the ground and never seen again. We have to find a way to use all the water that we have very efficiently, to use our energy. Do we need the whole spectrum of light for growing plants? Turns out no. So we're finding these things out for exploring space, but it has very big implications for sustainable Earth. And many of the things that I just talked to you about work the same way. On the way to Mars, we haven't gone to Mars yet because we are not ready. We have a system for recycling the water on the space station, recycling the air on the space station, and of course we have a toilet for human waste. All of those things are breaking more than once every month or two. Not okay for the way to Mars. And it's not because we did things foolishly or because we don't know what we're talking about. It's because we know we have a lot to learn, because things are happening different in this environment. And you also are working with a new environment. When we have, I'm going to go back just one here. When we look at the space station here, looking over the Earth, you can see that my view of the Earth is not to see the whole planet far away, but really I'm looking at part of the Earth. I'm looking down and I'm seeing something more like this. And actually, this picture is very timely. It's when we see a hurricane or a typhoon, this is what it looks like to us. And it's a very difficult feeling to look down from space and see this, because we can't really see the ground. We can only see the hurricane, and yet we know that the life of everyone under that storm is very troubled and will never be the same. And so in some ways, it's difficult to be the person that looks globally, sees so many things, and actually can't do anything about some of them. So I think that's part of our task as well. When you see a view like that, I have a feeling like I must be, if I'm seeing something so big, I must be high, looking out and seeing a wonderful Earth. But really, if we think about the Earth, and then we have the space station, and we're looking at the Earth, well, we must be down, right? Whoops, let me go back a little bit. Let's see. That was me on the clicker, my apologies. Let's see. It went very fast. Okay, so we must be looking down. So think about perspective. I'm going to challenge you with thinking about what does it feel like to look at things differently? Often, it feels strange. We see places that we know and we love. My crewmate Paolo Nespoli from Italy. Italy, indeed, shaped like a boot. Yes. And for me, this is home. In this picture, you see, I'm from Massachusetts. It's on the far right, the little curve there. That's Cape Cod. I'm from further inland. There's a large reservoir. Actually, I'll sort of point. Let's see, I can't really point, but there's a large reservoir. I'm from right around there. And yet, if you look on the left-hand side of the picture, you're seeing New York City and Long Island and the Hudson River leading up to Canada. So for me, that is home. And yet, if I zoom in a little closer, I can see more. I can think about what everyone is doing down there at home. And I can see home in different lights. And sometimes it's sunset, sometimes it's sunrise. With these windows that we have, instead of just a portal looking out of the space station like on a ship, we now have windows all around. And so I can look and I can see my home in the distance, and then it's coming right above me. And I can twirl around and I can watch it leaving, and I feel like I was there and I will be back. It's a very human way to be present. And when you look down from the space, I don't see the borders of the countries. None of us do. And it becomes actually difficult to feel almost that it's even important to come from a specific place, because it's really clear from being up there and looking down that we're all in one place. We're all on the spaceship Earth. But home is important. And I'm very pleased to bring some pictures of Sheikh Muzaffar. We trained together a little bit right before his mission. I was training, and so I got to see him off and wave goodbye. He's a very nice and interesting man. And I thought I would show you a picture of Malaysia. This is Pangkor Island. I thought the Chief Minister would like this. Am I correct? I think this is Pangkor Island. It's very beautiful from space. So many things are beautiful from space. And if you are on the internet, all of these pictures, I took 60,000 pictures on my mission. And all of those pictures belong to everyone. All of our pictures from the space station belong to everyone. There's no charging, no nothing. And you can find the place that means something to you, the place that's home. And you can see, I think, in the face of your countrymen here, if you're from Malaysia, you can see what it feels like to be in a place where suddenly so many more things are possible, and it just changes your point of view. Sheikh was up there with Peggy Whitson on the right. She just completed a mission of almost 1 year. She's a really remarkable lady, and their crewmate from Russia. Now, we don't get to choose each other when it comes to crews. This is my shuttle. This is my space station crew. When I arrived at the space station with Paolo and with Dimitri, we're in the middle. Already on the space station, there were 3 people. And then we make a crew of 6. Now, after 4 months or so, those 3 go away, and 3 more are coming. And so now we are a new crew of 6, and we do not get to choose our crew. There are so many complicating factors, many that are international, many about our skills, and we don't get to go maybe with our friends. But what's fascinating to me, and the reason that I come here today, is that I think that the lessons that we learn about how to see each other can apply for you. When we're on a space station, it's very clear to us that if one of the 6 here, doesn't do the work, then it won't get done. Sometimes my job is to do the work. Sometimes my job is to help my crewmate who needs help but doesn't know that they need help. Sometimes that is my job. Sometimes my job is to see who has a question that doesn't know how to ask it, or who needs to make an apology that doesn't know how to make the apology, or if I am owed an apology, is it so important? When you think about the mission that I just showed you, probably not. So that is our point of view up on the space station. And yet all of us are individuals. And everyone here in this auditorium is an individual as well. We have different skills, different things that we love, different people that we love, different food that we love. Everyone is different. This is my friend Satoshi Furukawa from Japan. And you're seeing a little bit about what it's like when individuals are living on the space station. All of us are different. We're doing everything you do every day. We're getting up sometimes happy, sometimes we're getting up tired, sometimes we have more to do than we can do, sometimes we like the place we sleep, sometimes we wish it would be just a little bit flat. Some people miss their pillow and they strap a pillow to their head. It's very funny. We don't choose the work that we do. I am a scientist, but I'm not always doing science work. The Russians sent fresh food up to ours on the space station. They sent raw onions for fresh food. I was thinking apples or oranges, but no, onions and pickles. But I learned to love onions and pickles. But here you see that it's a magical place. I like you to see the floating and the flying. For so long, and this I love, because this is Satoshi. And this is where you're making your own way, you're finding your own space in space. Now everyone is busy doing experiments. So Satoshi has to be the whole crew, the whole team. He's playing baseball. And it just gives you an idea of how different it is up there, and it gives us a different point of view that I think can be very helpful. And we'll do just a little of this with the sound, but this is about being brave. Maybe a little less sound, I can already tell. A duet with Ian Anderson of the rock group Jethro Tull, very famous for being the first to bring the flute to rock music, standing on 1 foot. And so I play the flute, and I love to play, but I'm not the best. I'm really not the best. They did very good things to the recording. They did. We played this together on the 50th anniversary of human spaceflight.
Thanks, Colonel Katherine Coleman and the International Space Station. We should remember that today's cosmonauts, scientists, and astronauts are still every bit the rocket heroes they were 50 years ago. So from the cultural city of Perm in Russia, let's salute Cady, Dima, and Paolo up there in orbit, and of course, the legendary Yuri Gagarin. Go safely.
So we had never met. I was an average flute player who loved to play, so I bring my flute with me. I'm smart enough to know that if I play my flute on the International Space Station, eventually it's going to be on the internet. And I played with someone famous, and we did something unusual, and we did it on the 50th anniversary of human spaceflight, the 50 years after Yuri Gagarin launched from Kazakhstan, from Baikonur, up to space. And we did this duet between Earth and space. So I knew we would see it. And so what did that require in terms of seeing each other, in terms of collaborating, in terms of working in a group together when we hadn't even met in person, only talked on the phone? I had to be brave. And Ian had to be open. Is it hard for him to play? No, he does that all the time. Is it hard for me to play, knowing it's with someone like that? Yes. So I had to be brave, and he had to be open. And I submit to you that when you are working in these 2 days, you're getting to know each other, you run into somebody you don't know, maybe you're a little bit tired from the conference, you see them, you're a little bit tired of meeting people, and then you see their name tag and you think, maybe they need to know what I do. Because maybe there's a connection. Maybe it helps them understand what they do more, or maybe we can do something together. And so you need to be brave, and they need to be open. And that is your job while you're here for these 2 days. So towards the end here, I'll just show you some different ways of looking. You see our crew there. But what if we look at that picture this way? Do you see me? Not really, right? And so we're used to looking at people right side up. And what if we kind of look at that upside down? Try this one, okay? On the bottom, we see on the left, we see Tracy in the maroon shirt. We see Stephanie Wilson, aeronautical engineer, African American, on the bottom right. And then we see 2 people above there. We don't even really notice them. Most people don't, because we are so trained to see in a certain way. We're just used to it, and life is hard, and it's hard to take more time. But now we see Dottie Metcalf-Lidenberger, who's a teacher, an astronaut, and we see Naoko Yamazaki from Japan. So just by turning our heads and looking in a different way, I show you this trick, but really, when you're in a group and you're working, we've talked about being inclusive in terms of sustainable development. To me, that means inclusive of people in the solutions. Because if we are all the same, we will not find our way to the solutions. This slide shows Katherine Johnson. She is a woman who was responsible for the mathematics of determining the orbits of the first people who went to the moon for the Apollo program, and actually in orbiting the Earth, and many more airplanes besides that. She was the person who was responsible. When John Glenn first launched, he would not get in that space capsule until the woman that he had met, who he knew was the expert, they were just beginning to have computers do the math instead of people. And he said, I don't want to go until that woman, the smart one, does the math and tells me it's okay. So this is a very, very valuable woman who was unnoticed for many years at NASA. Here we have her in a picture. Not only is she a woman of color, she's wearing a dress of color. How can you miss this woman in this picture? But for many, there were 200 or more women like her working at NASA, being the computers. And no one really knew they were there. They just did the work. And I bring this up because there are people that we don't notice. And without noticing those people, we will not find our answers for development for space or for development for the Earth. Now, I just want to give you a quick example of how I try to include being an individual, scanning big and yet thinking, what can I do? What can I do today? The eclipse came across America just about 2 weeks ago, and I was very honored to be selected to be one of 4 people that was narrating the eclipse for CNN. And so I knew I would see the eclipse, and I knew that this was a moment that the world was focusing on. And certainly in the United States, where we don't always look far enough outside our borders, we're not realizing that somewhere in the world, every 18 months, there is a solar eclipse. But when we have one, it's important to us, right? But it was important to us. And we had an opportunity when I knew so many people would be focusing on this eclipse. There's 4 people narrating. I am number 3 of 4. And I said, I would love to do this. And this could be me. I can go, I can narrate the eclipse, I can share it with the audience. I'm pretty good at that. But why not use this opportunity to meet some other people? What about, this is my friend Jack, who was brave enough to apply for a great job at NASA because he felt like he was qualified. And then we have 5 Girl Scouts, 5 girls from St. Louis, Missouri, from Eastern Missouri. I said, if everybody's going to look at that screen, let's make sure they see things that they need to see and they don't even know it. That's also my family, my husband and my son on the right. My son is 17, my husband. And we got to do this as a family. And we created this. Now, when I asked to do this to CNN, they said, Ms. Coleman, it's really immensely more difficult if we are going to use children. I said, I know, but it's important, don't you think? And they did think so. And it was actually so much more difficult than I ever imagined, actually. I will really be honest and tell you that. It really complicated what we did that day immeasurably. And at the same time, we did something really important together. Millions of people saw not only me, but girls saw people that they could relate to. And I think, and this is the crew, this is the CNN crew plus my family, this is the people that made that happen. They don't even all know each other. We didn't know each other. And we basically landed, just like you're landing last night from the conference. We have 2 days at the conference here. We landed and we had really a lot of work to do, and the solar eclipse was not going to wait. But we had a mission. And even though it was hard, we accomplished it. And something else I want to bring to your attention is that when you see something so amazing as a solar eclipse, it makes you feel very small, not in a bad way, but it's so meaningful. And then when you see something so meaningful with a bunch of other people, we will be a group that are bound by this experience forever. We cannot undo the fact that we saw something amazing together. And that's what these 2 days at the Pangkor Dialogue are. This is a significant opportunity, and none of us ever be the same. It's something that's both a joy and a challenge. It happens in space. This picture here, I think this is my friend Tracy. To me, it's the epitome of humans and their relationship with the Earth. And down there, she's looking at you. She's looking at me. She's looking at the crew of Spaceship Earth. We have places to go, both on Earth and for exploration. And often, the challenges are actually very similar, and sometimes they can accelerate each other. And then we use that momentum. The fact that people think it's exciting to work for NASA and to work on recycling water for the space station, for going to Mars, we use that to bring them together. And they say, oh, this is really important for Earth too. Yes. So, you'll be able to see more of this film. This is Europe to the Indian Ocean. I think it might be looking familiar. This is our place. It's a fragile place. The data is out there. The climate is changing. We still live here. We can't do everything, but our job is to look wide and at the same time think on a small scale, how can we do something that will really make a change? And together, we can do that. When I think about the inclusivity, it's really about thinking of the wonder of what we're doing, the importance of what we're doing, thinking of how we're small and we're living in a big place. But home is really, really what it comes down to. This is where I live. It's a beautiful place. I loved the view from space. I didn't actually want to come home yet. Because the work was so compelling, and I knew home would be here, but I really wanted to stay. It takes a long time to get good at the work, and I wanted to stay long enough to get more work done. But it was wonderful to come home and to be a part of the very beautiful view. This is my backyard on a beautiful night. And something that keeps our family together is knowing that whether I'm on a space station or I'm in the backyard, my husband and my son and I, we're all seeing the same moon. And that's true for all of us that have gathered from all of these countries. We're all on the same planet. We see the same moon. We see the same beautiful nature. Even if it's different in the places that we live, it's important. This doesn't happen in Malaysia, but where I live, this happens a lot. And I think it also comes down to family. Us, my husband and my son. People don't actually ask the guy astronauts if they feel badly leaving their families, but they ask the women astronauts quite a bit, and I answer them. And I say, of course, I feel very badly leaving my family, but I have a job, I have a talent, I have a privilege to work there, and it's my commitment to do my part, both for the Earth and for exploration. And my family understands that, but it doesn't make it any easier. It does make it a little easier that I know I leave my son in good hands, both with his father and with his cat, who thinks he's a dog. Yes, a little confused. Very, very interesting, very dog-like cat. And, you know, there's articles like that, like this, being a mom in space. I show it to you because I think it's important to realize that we're all different and not everyone needs to be parents. It was important to me, and it doesn't mean that it's easy to keep these things straight and to get everything done. You know, this is me going off to space. My husband sent this picture the night that I launched. It still actually almost makes me cry of my son thinking about his mom there. It's very hard to do. Now, he's grown up just fine, as has the cat. And I have a wonderful husband who is a glass artist. And this is my last point to make to you, and that is that we're all different. We have different talents. My husband is a glass artist. And so it's important to him to explore his own worlds. He's ironically known for making glass planets. Very beautiful. Not like the Earth, but just in his imagination. And they're very beautiful. People give us a hard time because, you know, he makes them and I like to go to them. But I think you can see that we are all exploring in different ways. And it's not just about the technical people. It's about the fact that we need artists, we need writers, we need songwriters, we need people who make films. Because these are the images that tell us, that give us the vision of where we want to go. And they make it possible for people who have the ways to understand how to actually accomplish the mission. They need a vision. They need to understand. If you want funding, you need to make sure that the people with the funding understand really what is your mission and why should they care. And that involves storytelling. This mission, going further than low Earth orbit, it is next. And we will not do it unless we tell the stories, unless we, each of us on the team, think about what are our talents, and we make sure that on the team it is not people that look the same, but people who look different. It's people, it's recognizing that everyone has this look inside them. Everyone, even if you think you know who they are, you don't know who they are, and everyone has this little piece that is curious and wants to be part of the solution. I show you this picture at the end here because I stick out in this picture, but no one knew when I was a child that I would be in a picture like that. And that's why all of the children need to be ready. And that's why all of us need to be part of these solutions, because we're going to Mars, and this is where we're from. Thank you very much, the crew of the Spaceship Earth.